Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you, but I'm sorry you have to see me again. Please bear with me for another 3 hours. So I promise we will finish epigenetic part within 3 hours. Today is the second lecture about the NGS study for gene regulation. And we will continue last talk, and we are talking about how to identify motifs for consensus sequence. Then we see some gene structure, especially promoter, enhancer, and how to get the promoter, identify promoter region or enhancer region by histone modification, and what's the function of a histone modification. The second part is about the DNA methylation. So first, about DNA methylation, we may have some new concept about, not a new concept, about some concept about the CPG island and the CPG island shore. And then we will see how we apply NGS or technologies in the DNA methylation study. And in the last part, we will focus on bisulfite sequencing and see, can you hear me? Okay, and the last part, we will focus on bisulfite sequencing and see how we use bioinformatics tools, for example, Bismarck, to do such analysis, try to evaluate the methylation level of CpG or CHG or CHH. If we have time, I'd like to introduce a comprehensive study about between DNA methylation, histone modification, and the transcription regulation. The reason I like to spend maybe 10 minutes or 20 minutes about that is not give you a biology lesson, just want to let you know as a bioinformatician what kind of technology you can use in future, or you can help biologists to design experiment or to get whatever you want. And the last part is a hand-on instruction on MAX2. Use MAX2 to identify the peaks in the ChIP-seq and what's the difference between different comments of MAX2. And I will show you a few examples, and then Sean will bring you to one by one step and show you how to do that. Yeah. Let's first record the last part we have got. We talked some basic protocols we use in the ChIP-seq to identify transcription factor binding or to evaluate the histone modification. And also we use some footprint technology to see chromatin structure or identify the binding of transcription factor. And also we use high-C technology to see 3D structure of the DNA loop and the clip sequence, and I won't talk about that today. We know that's the ChIP-seq picture. And what's ChIP-seq? ChIP-seq, I have to repeat it again, is we get some sequence of our interest and then map to the genome sequence to see where they are. If we see some peaks there, we know, okay, what of our interest are located here. Especially, for example, if this is transcription factor ChIP-seq, and we are happy to see transcription factor of our interest binding here. But the question is, what's the motif sequence here? We want to know. And as I said, if we use a footprint technology DNA 1 or 8-seq, and we can get open chromatin region, but when we enlarge the sequence high up here, we may find a hole of cleavage region here. Those regions, they are kind of we call the subregion with a depleted wreath. Why? Because the transcription, which means the transcription factor may binding here, block those sequences to be cleaved. So from that, we also want to know what are those transcription factor combining here. But how can we know which transcription factor is there? So we can use some information like a motif local, and then we map into this area to scan this sequence area, try to see which motif match with the sequence here. So the first lecture today is we want to see how we do motif finding. What is the motif? Sequence motif in genetics, a sequence motif is a common DNA nucleotide or a common protein amino acid sequence, which is first, this is common. Second, this is a kind of widespread, not only one location and one sequence, and I say that's motif. And also in most cases, those consensus sequences, they have some biological significance, which means this motif are very important in terms of functional, biological function. But basically, we have two scenarios to identify motif in chip-seq protein. One is okay. For example, those are chip-seq for one transcription factor, and then we can search existing database like a transfact and the database and see which transcription factor can significantly enrich in those regions. So they can scan over the whole sequence of some net. The other one is much more difficult because we have no idea. In that case, we have no idea what's the transcription factor supposed to be here. And also, we have no idea what's the location of those motifs should be. Maybe here, maybe there, maybe there. So in that sense, the chip-seq there have thousands enriched lengths. So in that sense, we also want to find the consensus sequence which are significantly enriched in all peaks. But we cannot use those novel ones because we have no idea they are true or we are supposed to get some novel finding here. So before talking about the details of the stages to identify motif in such two scenarios, we want to start with the first simple case. For example, if we know there is a motif, whatever it is, but we know the sequence is a CCACT, and then we have a long sequence. We want to know where is the binding site. That's the most simple question. How can you do that? You want to use some software or something else? No, you just copy paste this sequence in the Word file and then search CCACGT. You may get some site. Or you may search reverse complement of CCACGT. It's a ACGTGG. And maybe you can find more here. But the question is, if I see some sequence like GCACGT, so you think it's a binding site or no? How can we know that? So first, we want to know, as I said, if we have a multiple sequence, they have a similar sequence information there. Maybe we can get the consensus sequence. Here is a simple examples here. We have a number 7 sequence here, AGAACA or ACAACA or blah blah something. And you can see for position 1, all sequences here are only 6 base pair and 6 nucleotides. And the first one OA, the third one OA, the fourth one OA. So it's easy. We can say that's AAA. But how about the third and the fifth and the sixth? Third, we have a multiple RG, and the fifth is a multiple C, and the last one multiple A. Then we may say, okay, the consensus sequence is most likely to be AGAACA. Or maybe we can use some letters to be more exactly describe this consensus sequence. Is more like A, this is a CG, or GC, AA, this is a CG, this is AT. But however, in most case, or most complicated case, this consensus sequence, if you want to use letters to describe consensus sequence is not suitable. What we have to use, there is a concept here, position weight matrix, PWM. The same example as last previous slides. We have something here. But what's the position weight matrix? Simply speaking, it's kind of like a frequency matrix. So for first position, this matrix has a 4 rows in DNA case, ACGT. So if it's a protein sequence, how many rows should we have? 20, yeah. And now from 1 to 6 is the position. So you can see for the first position, OA, so it's 100% O1 here. For the second position, most are G and only 1 C. So we can get the frequency matrix, or we call the position weight matrix here. Now, the question is, we now have a PWM. We given a PWM, now how can we assign score to any particular sequence? Then we know how similar the sequence with the transcription factor. For example, here is the same matrix as last one. Now I have a sequence ACAACA. The question is how high confidence you have. This sequence matched position weight matrix. Of course, we scan one by one. A, the first one A. Second is a C. The third one is a AACA. Then we have a score. We have a probability first. For each one, this is 100%. This is only 14%, and 100%, 100%, 86%, 86%. Then when we time them together to get the probability given matrix B and the sequence S, the probability sequence S matches with the probability matches with the sequence the frequency matrix is this probability 0.1. Sounds not good, right? Only 10%. How could that be? However, it's not true. If we say, okay, we may pick up some sequence as a comparison, some random sequence as a comparison, then what's the probability? Assume for each position, the probability to have an ACGT random pickup number is a 25%, is a 1/4. Then you can say this probability is much smaller than that one. It's a 0.00098. So in other words, if we divide this one by that one, we can get the odds ratio is over 400. So which means the sequence is much better in terms of probability. This sequence is much better to compare random sequence. Of course, we can use a score to describe this one. The score is defined as a log2 ratio or log2 of odds ratio. So you can see for this one, the score is 8.72. Or in other words, we can from the total count to the position weight matrix, and then we can go first with the score matrix, which we call the position specific scoring matrix, which just a log2. Then first, like a log2, the position frequency and divided by the random frequency here. Here we assume ACGT data the same random frequency 0.25. Actually, we know in most cases we don't use this one, especially like in the human genome. We know GC has a lower frequency than AT, so this cannot be the correct one. But here for simply comparison, I just use 0.25 to avoid making you guys confused. So for this one, we divide it by this one, then we get this matrix first. Then we have the same question. If we have a sequence TATAAT, what's the score we can get? We go to one by one, then plus them together. we have a score 8.56. Of course, we know this sequence we pick up the most frequent one, most high frequency one. So we know this one definitely matches this motif. But the question is, if I give you another one, TAAAAT, and then you can see it's very similar to TATTT, except that the third position, they have a lower frequency here, A, compared to the high frequency T. Then the score is lower than the first one. But the question is, how good or how bad the score is? What we can do? One way we can do is, based on this one, we get the maximum score or and minimum score. Then we have a range. So any sequence with the score, we can compare how they similar to the max and how similar to the minimum. So we use a relative score to describe this similarity. It's defined as the score S minus minimum divided by maximum minus minimum. So in this case, we find that the relative score is a 0.91. Then we say, okay, it's pretty good, right? That's a comparison. But still, for this comparison, it's just to give you a value. We still have no idea. The statistician may say, okay, what's the force discovery rate or something? Now, let's say next example. We have a number of chip-seq enriched sequences here. Now, we know there is no motif binding here. So we want to compare the motif. First, for each sequence, we can get the highest matching side with the score, like this one. Okay, now, how good or how bad or something, we don't know. But we say, okay, we have a cutoff. For example, we choose cutoff 1. Then you say, I'm happy. All of them, they are here. So does it mean all of them, they can bind, all of them, the transcription factor can match all the sequence, the binding? Can we make such conclusion? No, you are right, no. So what can we do? The one way or the most often way bioinformaticians do is we choose some random selected some regions. For example, if they are promoter sequence, the chip-seq bind enriched region are promoter, then we select some other promoter region, random select, and then we use the same transcription factor to scan there, and we can get the highest score, like this one. And also, we use the same cutoff to see how good or how bad they are. You can see with the same cutoff 1 and only one random sequence, they cannot match. Most of them match. So which means the force discovery rate in this case, with given the cutoff 1, is very high. Because from this one, we don't assume the transcription factor combining here, but we still get 88. We still get most of them there compared to chip-seq enriched regions. We found that the ratio is 88%. But if we choose a higher cutoff, for example, we select the 7 score, then for the true one, maybe something was filled out. They don't fit very well, but it's reasonable. We get 1, 2, 4, we get 8 here. But for the random selection region, you can see most of them were filled out. So the force discovery rate is much better, is 29. But that's true. If the no motif doesn't really, I mean, like they don't have a bias to binding this chip enriched region, no matter how you choose the cutoff, even you choose higher, if those scores are pretty similar with the random one, the force discovery rate always be high. But in this case, so which means it's good, yeah. At least not bad. But in previous one, I showed you some case, but here, I'd like to show you another example for the transcription factor binding side. We have a cons here. It's a simple one. The total is 20. But for some site, we can find is highly conserved, only A binding here. For other CGT, no here. Then we get the positional weight matrix like this one. Some frequency is 0 or 1. Then when we use the scoring matrix, when you do log2 log ratio, you can see those zeros will be negative infinity. Then what we can do? If I said I have a sequence like A, T, A, T, A, C, then what's the score? What's the score you can get? Negative infinity, right? It's hard to give a score. Now, what we can do to avoid such one, especially in the small data set, we always can find the zeros here. We need to put the pseudo count there. What's pseudo count? Pseudo count is, for example, here we have a 20 sequence, but we know the random is 0.05, 0.25. So maybe we can add all of them 0.25. So give a small or a tiny number to avoid the zero somewhere. Or maybe we can get for large number sequence, we can get 1, or we can get 0.1, or square root of n. Doesn't matter. Many people use a different one to choose whatever they want. So here is an example. We use a 0.25 because we assume the frequency of ACGT, they are very similar. So 0.25 means we give a total 1 pseudo counter for ACGT. Then we evenly distribute it to all the sides. Then we diminish it to 0. And then we have same as the previous one, we can get the positional weight matrix, and then we can get non-infinity number here. Then whatever you put here, sequence, you always can get a score, and then you can compare. That's the purpose of this one. Purpose of pseudo count. Now, at the first beginning, when you see footprint, I show some motif logo. But what are they? It's a motif logo is one way we can visualize motif to people. What that mean? Let's go back to this matrix and to see what it represents. And there is a number of tools. They can create sequence logos based on either sequence or based on the matrix count you send or the frequency matrix you send. For example, like a WebLogger3, sequence2log, a number of tools can do that. But for this one, I just show one. I just simply use a MATLAB to show this one. And then what that means, what's the hat of this one? And what are, you can see for some area, some position, ACGT, they have a different signs. What's that mean? I believe you know. First, let's talk about the size of character. The size of character is kind of proportional to the frequency of ACGT. For example, in position 2, even from that, we can see position 2, C is the most frequent, right? C is 17 out of 20. And then is A, then is a G. But what's the total, or what's the head of each position? We call that the conservation score. For example, for the third position, all are A, so we can say the highest one A here. But before we talking about, you can see the y-axis here, the unit is B's. What's the B's? B's is the unit of the information. Before talking about that, we need to go to another concept we call the Shannon entropy. How many of you know the concept of entropy? Okay, that's good. Yeah. The entropy means measure the amount of uncertainty or randomness in some of probability distribution. the Shannon entropy is defined as sum over of frequency, negative of sum over frequency times log2 frequency. Here, the frequency, sum over frequency should be 1 because all count together, and each frequency should be positive value between 0 and 1. In one extreme case, if p is 0, then this one is a 0 too. So 0 times log2 0 is 0. However, from this one, in our case, when we compare DNA motif, we have a four nucleotide ACGT to compare. So if they are evenly distributed, like each one has a frequency 0.25, then we can get a Shannon entropy is a 2, right? And if we found, as the last one we showed, if there is a position ORA, what's the Shannon entropy should be? 0, right? Because only one here is a 1 here. 1 times log2 1 is a 0. For all others is 0 and also 0. So which means if the side is a value is most conserved, the Shannon entropy is the lowest one is 0. But if it's a side is a most random, like evenly distributed, we can get the maximum value for DNA sequence is a 2. Then in 1986, Schneider proposed another idea, information based on Shannon entropy, which shows a decrease in uncertainty. So it's a difference between before and after. Or in our case, we can define this information as the difference between random and true matches. Here, let's assume, as I said, assume ACGT has an equality probability at one position. And this one before is a 2. And then after that, if it's still random, then we can get this information score is 0 because 2 minus 2. But if it's quite conserved, so before we compare the random one, so 2 minus 0 is 2. That's the reason why we see in the motif logo, the highest one, most conserved 1A in the third position, the score is 2. The information is 2B. And for motif with W, and if we assume all the positions are independent and ACGTA is equally distributed on each position for the random case, then we can get the total information of the motif is in this one, in this formula. It's not critical. I mean, like you don't need to remember this one, but just remember what the information define. It's kind of define the difference between random and the actual. So let's go back to the sequence logo. Then, as I said, you can see the total path. We always put 2 here. Usually, we put 2, not always. And because the total head, as we showed before, if ACGT is equally distributed and if random distributed and equally random distributed, and then the maximum is 2. However, if you add the pseudo counts for each position, then that definitely means no one like this one, so purely focus on one nucleotide. For anyone, even the same position, we have a tiny or small amount of other CGT. So the score is lower than 2. And as I said, in most human cases, the GCTA, their frequency is not the same. Then you may, in some cases, you may see the most highest score is larger than 2. You won't be scared. It's okay. Now, we know we have as I mentioned, we have 2 scenarios we have to do. One is we know the motif. We want to use this motif to scan all the sequence. Try to find the maximum score and the location In the same time, we have a random, we can pick up some random sequence to compare such a metric and then see how high false discovery rate. But the second scenario is kind of difficult. The first one, in some existing database, and they have a document, some database like Transfact or JustFar, they documented many of how positional weight matrices at of the binding site. This is a old number, I think. Yeah, for Transfact, they have a larger than 700, almost right now, I think 900 or something. Yeah, and motif sequence there. And for JustFar, they have over 200. And this is a picture to show how they look like. For example, here is if we search one transcription factor 81 from JustFar, and they will show us the motif logo they documented, and they put something like this is the transcription factor. This is a name, false, and what's the class of that one, and what's the family, and the species, and the text group, blah, blah, all the information. And also you can find the frequency matrix here, or counts here, which one constitute the sequence logo. And you can get all the information. And then you can use that one to scan the region you have got from the chip-seq. Then try to see how good or how bad your experiment is. Second one, as I said, is a kind of a tough scenario. We call it de novo motif finding. For example, if I have hundreds or even thousands of DNA regions, I know common motifs there, but maybe I don't know what they are. How can I find them? And how can I find who they are or where they are? And we can use a chip or chip-seq experiment to get those regions. And we also can do microarray experiment after clustering analysis. But still, it's very difficult because we have no idea what's the actual signal. Of course, here we show there, we already know the answer, where they are and where it's located. But before we know the answer, we have no idea. We just have thousands or hundreds of DNA sequences, and we need to find the common sequence on all of them. Then what we can do? In general, we have two. I cannot say two, and maybe two classes of methods to do that. First one is what we call the camel sequence enumeration. So we use camel, for example, if we said, okay, I want to see the motif with a length of 6 nucleotides, and which one can be significantly enriched in the sequence I found. Then we can count all 6 more motifs from A to T, all of them, and then we see the occurrence of those 6 modes, and then compare with the background or random selected region sequences. And then we see which one is significantly enriched in the region we identify. This method is a very straightforward, easy to understand, right? Understood. And also we may, in most cases, we can find some most significant camel candidates. But the challenge or the problem of this one is, first, you have to determine, you have to make a decision how long the motif you want to see. As I said, if you say the 6 mode, then we enumerate all 6 modes. If you say the 8, we have to do 8 mode. And also, based on my experience, always they can show a long list of significant candidates. It's not a surprise, long list. Why? Because as I showed it before, the motif logo, they always have a kind of mixed information. It's not that everyone has most conserved, but the 6 mode here is conserved. It's only for each position, the only one. So we may class all significant 6 modes together, and then we can get a log. That's the way I like to do, easily control. But however, there is many other methods based on position-aware metrics. For example, they use EM, expectation maximization, or give sampling model, try to identify that one. The advantage of those one is there is no limitation on motif width. They use the model, try to see all the sequence and see which one is significantly enriched. And also, they are flexible with the nucleotide-based variations. What does that mean? That means if we have a 6 mode, for example, we have a AAAA, but when we map in some area, we find it's AAAAT. Then we say, okay, it doesn't match AAA, but probably it does. So this method is better than that one in that sense. But the challenge of this model are they have no guarantee to be convergent. Sometimes you may get nothing, or you may only find local optimal, not global optimal. So which means the sequence, the motif you find only fit part of regions you find. But I don't be scared. I don't talk this method in detail today. It may take you another like 3 hours or even 6 hours to get them. So I just show you some popular programs. They use EM or use give us a sampling. Like Align S is the most popular one to use give sampling algorithm to identify motif. And the Mimi, I like the Mimi. I will show you later. Mimi is used the EM model and try to identify motifs. Mimi is kind of a simple software to identify motif. Right now you can see they expand it to a very big suite and they have all different functions. But today, because we are only care about the de novo findings, so I quickly show you. I don't talk about the algorithm they use. You will ask me if I do that. So I only show you how to do that simply. And this is an online software. So when you click that one, they may ask you to submit the data. The data could be normal mode or discrete mode. So this is a kind of, if you click that one, you know what that means. It's kind of like ask you to select the background, something. And then you can select the sequence alphabet, either DNA or RNA or protein, or you can customize it. So, and then you can input the sequence you need to identify. And this is a size distribution. So there is 3 options here. So you may say, okay, I want for each sequence, I want the motif. They have either 0 or 1 occurrence. Or I ask for each sequence, they must have at least 1 occurrence. Or for repetition, any number of them could be there. And you can choose based on your biological question. Then this one, you can select how many motifs you want to see, or you want the Mimi find. They can give you motif and give you PI, and you choose that. And they also have advanced options, including the range of motif width. Okay, if you say that I'm interested in motif, whatever you found, but from 5 nucleotides to 10 nucleotides, you can do that. And also you can say, okay, I need motif that at least to be identified in, for example, 600 sequence or site or something, you can do that. And okay, you can emphasize that the motif should be both strand or single strand. You can find many information you like. Now, the next one shows the output of the Mimi. So they can, after you put the data there, and in the finally they can send you the significantly enriched motif with log here. They can show you this log, this motif matches which strand, positive strand, and maybe something on negative strand, but all are here positive strand. And they have a value to show how significant they are. They also show you how many sides match this motif. And usually they always sorted by this one. Of course, more size, maybe more size, the value should be more significant. and they show you the width of the motif. And if you click this one, this more, you click those one, they give you a new window to enlarge the logo, so that you know more details about that. And the last one is more interesting. If you also can click the link, they may submit the motif to other tools. Then you can compare. Oh, it's original, or it's a logo, or which one is the most similar to this one. That's very good, very helpful. Okay, and here I may talk a little bit about one example people used to find a motif. And in 2008, they published a paper in MCB, maybe molecular cell biology. Yeah. And they try to identify, they used ERR for ChIP-seq data, try to identify those binding sites between two different cells. One is the MCF cell and the AKT-induced MCF cell. They can say lots of them, they share the common binding. They have a very similar motif. In the same time, when they scan transfect database, they also can find some very similar transcription factor, they similar to ERE, and which could be the core factor of this one. You don't need to know the exact biological story here. Here, just want to show you, like in this paper, and like maybe in future you will do. You can first, you get a ChIP-seq data, and you need to find the motif. You know what's that, and maybe you can think about, is it possible some other core factor they work with this transcription factor to regulate the genes? But how can you know that? Maybe you can, from the motif search, you can find such clue, then extend your biological story. You want to take a break, or I can go ahead so we can finish earlier? Yeah, I go ahead. I know you will be happy. Yeah. Now, the second one, I want to talk about something about the gene structure. Looks like another biological story, but no. And we know this is a general gene structure. And the gene body from 5' UTR, and then exon, intron, exon, 3' UTR. But we know the most, in terms of gene regulation, the most important one is promoter. Promoter will determine, and the promoter and the transcription, the activity of the transcription factor on the promoter will determine the gene expression level. But in eukaryotic promoter, and normally we have some features here. This is a transcription start site, but about the 30 or 25 base pair, we usually can find that we call the data box here. And about 100 BP, we can find the CC80 box. And over 200, we can find the GC box. This is close to transcription start site. But right now, and people find more and more evidence shows there is some area, no matter both in upstream of the gene or even downstream of the gene, we have an area we call enhancer or silencer, which can regulate the gene expression. Even the distance could be up to 1 million base pair, which is far away. But why? Do you remember in last lecture, we talked about the structure of DNA molecule? And we know the sequence we say, okay, it's a usually, and it's a 2D, look like a 2D, but it's a sequence is like this way. But actually, they can be folded into 3D. So even in 2 dimension or 1 dimension, they look very long, like 1 million base pair. But by some mechanism, they may have a structure very close to each other, which we call DNA looping. So the looping means the DNA loop allows a transcription factor bound to a distant DNA regions, then interact with a polyQ, and then do transcription, start transcription. And what those region we call, and those region, this region, usually we call it an enhancer. It's usually short like a 50 to 1,500 base pair region of DNA that can be binded by transcription factor, then active downstream genes or target genes. As we know, we have a number of technologies, 3C, tripad, high-C, can identify such a root, enhancer region. But still, we want to know how we want to more evidence can prove or can identify the region and their target. And do you remember in the beginning, in the last lecture, when I talk about histone modification, we showed one paper, one result from the paper published in 2007 in Cell. They showed the number of histone modification, the association between histone modification and the gene expression. They separate the genes into 4 groups with a high expressed and the medium expressed or low expressed or silent gene. Not a surprise, we can see poly2 is correlated with those 4 groups. The high expressed gene, they have a high signal of poly2. We also find H3K4 trimethylation, they also correlated with this one. So what's that mean? That means H3K4 trimethylation, they are associated with the promoter or transcription start site. This paper, published in 2012 in Nature, they listed encoded histone modifications and the variations, and they showed their function, corresponding function. And for example, they showed we know H3K27 acylation is an active regulator, and which may distinguish active enhancer and promoter from their inactive counterparts. And also, like H3K4 monomethylation or H3K4 dimethylation, they are all marks of enhancer or promoters. And as I mentioned, the H3K4 trimethylation and the H3K9 acylation, they all related to that. And then we can use those signals. For example, I will tell you the story in the last part. If we have some ChIP-seq data for this histone modification, maybe we can use them to identify enhancer region. But the enhancer, people usually call the enhancer into 2 groups, active or poised enhancers. The active enhancer, we know, is associated with H3K27 acylation. Poised enhancer mostly are associated with H3K4 monomethylation, but no acylation signal here. And also some people claim that K27 trimethylation or K9 trimethylation, they may also associated with the poised enhancer. This enhancer are spatially associated in the development of differential functions. And people found the poised enhancer are more likely to be conserved between species. Yeah, and let's stop here for 10 minutes. Yeah, because I saw one student left, so if you want, you can. If not, you have a chance.